Today we're diving into an ancient legal mystery straight from the Talmud. Now it all starts with a pretty simple question about a knife that's stuck in a wall. But believe me, it spirals out into this huge philosophical puzzle about the very nature of, well, things. Let's get right into it.
So here's the big question, the one that's going to drive everything we talk about today. When is an object that is physically, solidly attached to the ground legally considered not attached? I know, it sounds like a riddle, right? But it's a really profound legal question that ancient scholars spent a lot of time wrestling with.
Okay, to really get this, you've got to understand two basic categories. Over on the left, you've got things that have always been attached to the ground. You know, a mountain, a cave, reeds growing in a field. They're just part of the earth. But on the right, you have things that were separate at first and then got reattached. Think about a house built from stones, or, a knife stuck in a wall. This is the whole puzzle. Does an object's history, its past, actually change its legal status right now?
And that distinction, well, that's what leads us right to the heart of our story, a really strange legal puzzle.
A brilliant ancient scholar named Rava asks this exact question. See, according to ancient Jewish law, an animal has to be slaughtered with an instrument that's detached. So what's the deal if you take a knife, a perfectly detached object, and you wedge it into a wall so it's good and stuck? Is it now legally attached, which would make the slaughter totally invalid, or does it still count as detached? That's our mystery. So how do you even begin to solve something like that? Well, Rava basically becomes a legal detective, and he starts looking for clues and precedents in some really surprising places. And this is our first big clue.
Our detective, Rava, kicks off his investigation with a wild detour into the laws of idol worship. Now, you might be thinking, what in the world does that have to do with a knife in a wall? But Rava is searching for a fundamental principle, something that gets to the very core of what it means for an object to be attached to the ground.
So he poses this fantastic test question. Let's say a person starts to worship their own house as an idol. Does that house become legally forbidden because it was used for idol worship? The answer here is going to give us our first major breakthrough. And the key piece of evidence he pulls out comes straight from the book of Deuteronomy. This verse sets up a critical rule. It says you can worship idols on a high mountain, but the mountain itself can never become a forbidden idol because it's a natural, inseparable part of the earth. And boom, that's the genius of Rava's logic. We know from Jewish law that a house can become forbidden through idol worship. So if a house can be forbidden, but a mountain can't, then a house can't have the same legal status as a mountain. Therefore, a house, which, remember, is built from stones that were once separate, must legally keep its detached identity, even when it's firmly attached to the ground. So that's our first big clue. Its history actually matters. Okay, so armed with that principle, the Talmud throws another puzzle at us. This one is a kind of riddle involving rainwater and some pretty complex laws of ritual purity. Now, this gets a little tricky, but just stick with me because the payoff is absolutely fantastic. So here's the scenario. Someone puts a bowl on top of a wall to collect rainwater. And the big legal question is whether that water can make seeds ritually impure, which depends entirely on the person's intent when they put the bowl out.
And this is where the text seems to just completely contradict itself. On the one hand, a passage implies that water on the wall is basically like water spilled on the ground. That treats the wall as legally attached. But on the other hand, another passage implies the water is being used with a specific purpose, which would only make sense if the wall is legally detached. So what is it? Is the wall attached or is it detached? The text seems to be saying both at the same time. So, faced with this glaring contradiction, one scholar, Rabbi Elazar, he basically throws his hands up and suggests the simplest answer. He says, you know what? The text is just a mess. It's probably just stitched together from two different sources, written by two different rabbis who just disagreed with each other. Case closed, right? Just a simple copy-paste error.
Yeah, not so fast. There's another scholar who thinks there's a much smarter, much more elegant way to crack this code.
Another scholar, Rav Papa, he steps in with this beautiful solution. He's just not buying the "it's a mistake" argument. He's convinced there's a hidden logic here, a single consistent principle that makes the whole thing make perfect sense. His whole solution hangs on making a brilliant distinction. First, he says, we have to define what kind of wall we're talking about. Let's start with a cave wall. This isn't a wall somebody built. It's part of a natural cave, a rock formation that has always been attached to the earth. It was never a separate thing.
And then you've got your built wall.
This is, a normal wall, the kind we see every day. It's constructed from stones or bricks that were dug up, moved around, and put together by people. They were once detached objects, and now they've been reattached to the ground.
So Rav Papa's big reveal? There is no contradiction. Not at all. The text wasn't contradicting itself. It was simply talking about two totally different kinds of walls. The part that treats the wall as attached to the ground, that's talking about a cave wall. And the part that treats it as detached, that's talking about a built wall. And just like that, the riddle is solved. The text is perfectly consistent.
Okay, so this brings us right back to where we started. Now that we have this really powerful principle that things that have been reattached can legally keep their detached status, the scholars circle back to the original case that kicked this whole thing off.
So, they try to apply this brand new logic to finally, once and for all, solve the mystery of the knife on the wall. Is it legally attached or is it detached? They start digging for precedents, looking for a clear-cut case that will settle it.
Attempt number 1. They find this case about a sharp piece of flint that's naturally sticking out of a wall. Someone uses it to slaughter an animal, and the slaughter is ruled invalid. This seems like a slam dunk, right? An object in a wall is considered attached. Mystery solved.
But nope. Using Rav Papa's brilliant new logic, they immediately shoot this down. They say, wait a minute, how do we know that case isn't talking about a cave wall? I mean, if the flint was just a natural part of a cave, it was never detached to begin with. So you can't compare it to our knife, which was a detached object. The proof fails.
Okay, round 2. They find another case. This time, someone embeds a knife in a wall, slaughters an animal with it, and the slaughter is declared valid. Okay, this has to be it, right? A reattached knife is legally still considered detached.
But, and you might have guessed it, this proof gets shot down too, this time on a technicality about the owner's intent. And right there, that's where the ancient text just stops. The debate ends. There's no final answer. The case is left unsolved. And you know what? That's maybe the most fascinating part of all. It forces us to ask a much, much bigger question. What truly defines an object? Is it its history, where it came from? Or is it its current state, what it is right now? The intellectual journey, it turns out, was the real destination all along.